The year is 1931, a seemingly ordinary year, yet beneath the surface tensions are building, alliances are shifting, and the world is teetering on the edge of profound change. In Northeast Asia, Manchuria is a land of rich resources, a vast territory brimming with untapped potential. Its fertile plains promise agricultural wealth, while beneath the soil lie valuable mineral deposits. But it's also a region under weak Chinese control, fractured by warlords, each vying for power and influence. The central government in Nanjing struggles to exert its authority over these regional strongmen. Japan, hungry for resources and power, sees Manchuria as the answer to its growing needs. The island nation is rapidly industrializing, but lacks the raw materials to fuel its ambitions. It already controls the South Manchuria Railway, a vital artery that snakes through the region, giving Japan significant economic and strategic leverage. And to protect its interests, Japan has stationed its elite Kwantung Army there, a highly disciplined and well-equipped force ready to defend Japanese assets and project power. Tensions simmer. Locals resent Japanese soldiers, viewing them as unwelcome occupiers on their ancestral lands. The Japanese, in turn, see themselves as rightful rulers, destined to bring order and prosperity to what they consider a chaotic and underdeveloped region. Small clashes are frequent, a constant reminder of the underlying animosity between the two sides. These incidents, though seemingly minor, threaten to escalate into something far more dangerous. And the Kwantung Army acts independently, often disregarding the directives of the civilian government in Tokyo. It's driven by young, nationalistic officers eager for action, men who believe in Japan's manifest destiny and are willing to take risks to achieve it. The Great Depression has hit Japan hard, exacerbating existing social and economic problems and fueling a sense of desperation. Factories close, unemployment soars, leaving millions without work or hope. The economic hardship breeds discontent and instability, and the civilian government appears powerless to address the crisis, further eroding public trust and confidence. Military leaders argue that only expansion can save Japan, providing access to vital resources and new markets. And Manchuria is their target, the key to Japan's future prosperity and security. China is fragmented, struggling to unify under Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist government, while Japan's army grows impatient for conquest, eager to seize the opportunity presented by China's weakness. The world, distracted by its own crises, particularly the global economic meltdown, looks away, failing to recognize the looming danger in Northeast Asia. Manchuria is a powder keg, a volatile mix of political instability, economic desperation, and military ambition. It's one spark away from igniting a conflict that will reshape Asia, with consequences that will reverberate around the globe. The stage is set for a dramatic confrontation, a clash of empires that will determine the fate of millions. A single, calculated incident, a misstep, or a deliberate act of aggression could unravel the fragile peace, plunging the region into war. The fate of millions hangs in the balance, their lives and livelihoods threatened by the impending storm. The world stands on the brink, teetering on the precipice of a conflict that will soon engulf it, unaware of how close it is to disaster, oblivious to the gathering storm clouds on the horizon. The spark is about to be struck, and the world will never be the same. Japan's obsession with Manchuria was fueled by desperation and ambition. The Great Depression devastated Japan's economy, leaving it starved for resources like coal and iron. Manchuria, rich in these materials and sparsely populated, seemed the perfect solution. Japanese propaganda painted it as a promised land for settlers and a key to national survival. The military, especially the Kwantung Army, saw conquest as Japan's destiny and a buffer against the Soviet Union. Historical pride from the Russo-Japanese War added to their sense of entitlement. Civilian leaders in Tokyo were seen as weak. The army wanted action. Manchuria was not just land, it was the key to Japan's future. Economic need, military ambition, and national pride made invasion inevitable. The march north was set in motion. Every conflict needs a trigger. For Japan, it was the Mukden incident. On September 18, 1931, Japanese officers staged a tiny explosion on the South Manchuria Railway, blaming Chinese troops. The damage was minimal, but it was enough for the Kwantung Army to launch a full-scale assault. The entire event was a false flag, orchestrated by radical officers without Tokyo's approval. Their goal: force the government's hand and justify invasion. Within hours, Japanese troops seized Mukden, meeting little resistance. The Chinese, under orders to avoid conflict, hoped for international intervention. The spark had been lit. Manchuria was ablaze. The world watched, but did nothing. With the Mukden incident serving as their convenient excuse, the Kwantung Army, already poised for action, moved with calculated speed and ruthless efficiency. Their plans, meticulously crafted in advance, were now put into motion. Mukden, the jewel of Manchuria, fell in a single day, a testament to the Kwantung Army's overwhelming force and the element of surprise. The city's infrastructure and strategic points were quickly seized. Following Mukden's swift capture, other key cities like Changchun and Kirin soon followed, succumbing to the relentless advance of the Japanese forces. Each city represented another strategic victory. Japanese forces, modern and unified, equipped with advanced weaponry and bolstered by unwavering morale, presented a formidable fighting force. Their military prowess was undeniable. They overwhelmed the scattered and poorly equipped Chinese defenders, who were often caught off guard and lacked the resources to mount a sustained resistance. Chiang Kai-shek, the leader of nationalist China, remained focused on his primary objective: eradicating the communist threat within his own country. He made the controversial decision to order a policy of non-resistance in Manchuria, prioritizing internal stability over defending against foreign aggression. Chiang Kai-shek placed his faith in the League of Nations, trusting that the international body would intervene diplomatically and restore Manchuria to Chinese control. But it was the civilians who suffered most grievously during this period of upheaval and conflict. Their land was seized, their businesses were lost to the invaders, and their livelihoods were shattered by the sudden occupation. Daily life was irrevocably upended by the occupation, as communities were disrupted and families were torn apart by the chaos. Reports of violence, abuse and atrocities spread rapidly, painting a grim picture of the harsh realities under Japanese rule. As Japanese authority tightened its grip on Manchuria, the local population found themselves increasingly subjected to oppressive measures and strict control. While resistance did emerge, it was largely sporadic and quickly crushed ruthlessly by the superior military might of the Kwantung Army. Reprisals against those suspected of resistance activities were swift, harsh and brutal, designed to instill fear and discourage further opposition. Faced with the unbearable conditions of occupation, countless refugees fled their homes, seeking safety and refuge from the encroaching Japanese forces, even as winter approached. These displaced people faced the perils of hunger and the unforgiving cold, their suffering compounded by the lack of adequate shelter and resources. By the early months of 1932, Manchuria was firmly under complete Japanese control, transformed into a puppet state under their dominion. The invasion had been swift, decisive and utterly devastating for the Chinese people of Manchuria, marking a turning point in the region's history. The world watched as the League of Nations faced its first real test of collective security, a concept designed to prevent aggression and maintain international peace. But the League's response proved to be slow, indecisive and ultimately ineffective, revealing the limitations of international diplomacy in the face of determined aggression. The Kwantung Army's audacious gamble, defying international norms and expectations, had paid off handsomely, solidifying their position and emboldening their ambitions. Manchuria was now firmly in Japan's grasp, a valuable territory to exploit for its resources and strategic location, a new jewel in the expanding Japanese empire. The consequences of this act of aggression would reverberate far beyond the borders of Manchuria, shaping the course of international relations for years to come. The established world order was undergoing a profound shift as the balance of power tilted and the seeds of future conflicts were sown in the fertile ground of unchecked aggression. The world turned to the League of Nations, hoping for action. China appealed for help, but the League's response was slow and toothless. Japan ignored calls to withdraw, claiming self-defense. Britain and France, weakened by depression, hesitated. The US stayed out. The Lytton Commission investigated, eventually condemning Japan's actions and calling Manchukuo a puppet state. The League voted overwhelmingly against Japan, but Japan simply walked out. A month later, Japan quit the League entirely. The League's failure was clear. It had no power to stop aggression. The world's first experiment in collective security had collapsed. The message to aggressors everywhere was unmistakable. With Manchuria firmly conquered and under their control, the Japanese military had achieved a significant strategic victory. The vast territory, rich in resources, was now under their dominion, setting the stage for their next move in solidifying their presence in the region. Japan needed a way to legitimize its rule, both to the international community and to the local population. Direct military occupation wasn't a sustainable long-term solution. They needed a more palatable facade to mask their imperial ambitions. Instead of outright annexation, which would have drawn immediate condemnation from other world powers, they created Manchukuo, a puppet state, a seemingly independent nation designed to serve Japan's interests. This allowed them to exert control without the overt appearance of colonial rule. Puyi, the last Qing emperor who had been overthrown years prior, was brought out of obscurity and installed as its figurehead, but real power rested with Japanese advisors, pulling the strings from behind the scenes, and the Kwantung Army, which ensured that Japan's interests were always prioritized. Manchukuo's government, army and economy were all ultimately controlled by Japan, ensuring that the resources and wealth of Manchuria flowed directly into Japanese coffers. Propaganda painted it as a harmonious, multi-ethnic utopia, a land of opportunity and prosperity for all. But reality was harsh, a stark contrast to the rosy picture being presented to the world. Japanese settlers enjoyed privileges, receiving preferential treatment in housing, employment, and access to resources. Chinese residents faced oppression and forced labor, often working in harsh conditions for little or no pay. Resources were exploited relentlessly to fuel Japan's ever-growing war machine, with little regard for the environmental or social consequences. Industrial growth benefited Japan almost exclusively, exacerbating local poverty and creating a vast economic inequality. The promise of prosperity, dangled like a carrot in front of the local population, masked a regime of systematic exploitation and oppression, where the suffering of the Manchurian people was deliberately hidden from the outside world. Manchukuo was a colonial fiction, a carefully constructed facade designed solely for Japan's gain and imperial ambitions. The world saw through the charade, recognizing Manchukuo for what it truly was, but ultimately did nothing to effectively challenge Japan's actions. The people of Manchuria paid the price for this international inaction, enduring years of hardship and oppression under Japanese rule. The region's fate was sealed by foreign ambition, becoming a pawn in a larger game of imperial power and geopolitical strategy. For Manchuria's 30 million people, Japanese rule meant fear and hardship. The Kempeitai secret police enforced strict control, dissent was crushed, land was seized, crops taken, and workers exploited in dangerous factories. Opium was pushed to pacify the population, fueling addiction and decay. Schools forced Japanese language and loyalty, erasing Chinese identity. Resistance simmered. Guerrilla fighters sabotaged and ambushed, but faced brutal reprisals. The three-alls policy, kill all, burn all, loot all, devastated villages. Daily life became a struggle for survival under occupation. The dream of harmony was a nightmare of violence and oppression. Manchuria's people endured, but at a terrible cost. The invasion of Manchuria was the first domino in a global chain reaction. The League's failure emboldened Hitler and Mussolini, who saw that aggression went unpunished. Soon, Italy invaded Ethiopia and Germany remilitarized the Rhineland. Each time, the world hesitated. Appeasement replaced collective security, paving the way for wider war. In Asia, Manchuria became Japan's base for further conquest. Resources from Manchukuo fueled Japan's military buildup. Tensions with China escalated, leading to the full-scale Second Sino-Japanese War in 1937. Millions would die as the conflict merged with World War II. The road to global war began on the tracks outside Mukden. The world's failure to act had set disaster in motion. The invasion of Manchuria is more than a distant memory. It's a warning. It shows how unchecked aggression and weak international response can lead to catastrophe. For China, it's a symbol of national humiliation and fuels modern nationalism. In Japan, the legacy is contested, complicating relations with neighbors. Manchukuo's story exposes the realities of imperialism and propaganda, the promise of liberation masked exploitation and suffering. The world's inaction in 1931 made later wars inevitable. Studying Manchuria reveals the fragility of peace and the dangers of appeasement. History is a chain of consequences. What happened in Manchuria still shapes our world. We cannot afford to forget the lessons of 1931.